I letter the majority of the stuff I write, it becomes, you know, I'm like,
You really
I
think about
see
it.
this. Yeah, I look at it and I'm like, this isn't going to be fun at all. I'm like, there's no reason why I should have a tail that stretches all the way across the page.
Sneaks around a
So
character.
that, yeah, you know, you're cutting it behind their head, and there's weird stuff, and it just looks awful. It looks convoluted. But I've been pretty lucky to work with artists who understand and know what they're doing. You know, I mean, if it completely changed something, maybe I would ask them. But like a guy I work with now on most of my stuff, and we've got a few things that I can't announce we're working on, but
Like what?
he's brilliant, and
Good
he
try.
sends me like his rough pencils. He's like, here's this page. What does it look like? I'm like, it looks fantastic, man. That's great. And if he changes something, he's like, look, does this work? Is this okay? Like that's great. And I've worked with people who've sent me stuff who just get the script and I don't see anything until the finish, and I'm like, that's awesome, but guess what? No words are going anywhere in this book. Like every shot is like right up into somebody's eye, and I'm like, where are they speaking at? You know, and so that's a bit tough, and it gets frustrating. You know, I mean, you're like, well, no, you got to redo this page, man. I've tried to letter it. It's just not going to work. You know, it's just word balloons like all down the middle because there's nowhere to go.
The frustrating thing is I see a lot of artists all the time leaving plenty of space up top, and they clearly want those balloons to go up there, and the letters will drop it right down on everything. Like, come on.
Why?
My rule is I never want to cover up any body parts,
Yeah.
any major scenery. Like I just lettered something for someone else, and there was not one single artist in that entire book who understood that words have to go somewhere on the page. It was, and so you would get, the first panel would be, you know, the panoramic shot, one word in the entire panel. 15, you know, balloons in the next 3, and they're all like this big, and it's 2 people nose to nose, and I'm like, this is, I mean, if you don't want to see what somebody, you know, what you drew, if you don't want people to see what you drew, that's fine. But now I feel like an asshole because I'm covering
looks
up
like
your
you're
stuff.
being
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
why are all these cloud heads talking to each other? You know, that's what it looks like. And
Typically, a lot of the companies will require the artists, like, please just give us some roughs to look at first. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody should do roughs anyway. You know, and then you can see, you know, jump on it right away, because that's when you can tell them before they've gotten too invested, like, please, there's no room for dialogue.
Well, definitely before they get to the inking stage, because that's
Yeah.
a bitch.
Tip to artist: always rough out the word balloons. They don't have to be
Yes.
Yeah.
great. They don't have to be like, you know, you don't have to understand like, okay, how big is this? Just space. So you have a
Get you to
general
think about
idea.
it.
Yeah.
And there
You,
are
you can
elements
you
to
can
it.
do that even if you're working from a plot and there's no finished script. You can go, you know, I'm drawing a panel here of Nick Fury chewing out an underling. Well, Nick Fury's going, and there's got to be room for him to say, you yard brickin' gold monkey, rah, 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 rah. So, you know, about that much space. You know, if you look at Alex Toth artwork, the word balloon shapes are part of the composition of the panel. They're not left over. They're not put in the space that won't cover up, you know, the character's elbows. They're put in a way that will make the panel more dynamic. So you know you gotta
And he
work
cared
from
about
that.
the white of the balloon as a composition element.
Yeah.
And you should. It's there. It's not something that's not there. It's why I often rail and people argue with me. I don't like when people do the kind of transparent lettering. Like, this way you can sort of see the art through it. It's like, no, now it's all just this mess. Everything's competing with each other. It's like, lettering is a real thing, and it's a real craft, and it should be given some time and due.
Yeah, I work with artists in many different ways, and there are some times when it, you know, I wouldn't dream of asking for a redraw, and if the word balloons are going to have weird tails all over, I'll rewrite the script.
Yeah.
You know, if this character is over on the left and there's no room for him to have the third word balloon in the panel, well, I'll figure out a way to have him talk first, and adjust around it. But also there are times, I mean, particularly with Astro City, where I'm telling very character-focused stories, that if the panel isn't from the right angle, if we don't have the right point of view, it's not going to tell the story as well. then it's a wonderful thing that Brent works digitally now, because he can say, oh yeah, I can shrink that up, I can move it over, I can, I've already drawn it, but moving it around and changing the graphics and the layout is going to be no difficulty here. So on some books, I'm very, very much the art director, sort of the director of photography, saying, no, we need an angle here, we need this, that. And on some books, it's just, you tell the story the way you want to tell the story, and as long as you leave enough room for some word balloons, I will rewrite stuff that fits. It's whatever makes for the best final product. We're not here to write great scripts. We're here to write great comics. So what it comes out like in the other end, that's the point. I don't need to be precious about making sure all my word balloons get in the story. If rewriting them and cutting them will make the book a better experience and work better with the art.
And that's an example of all the members of the team working as a team, working towards a common goal, which is telling the story the best way it can be told, and requires the input from all those people, not just, like Leia was, not just a workhorse, not just a bunch of hired hands. That's why it seems like when you have those mix and match sort of arranged marriage sort of things, it takes a while for the team to get their feet because they're not used to communicating together. Or perhaps they're used to showing up, doing a job, sending it in and moving on. Have you worked with people like that? I mean, how do you get past that, I'd say that boundary of getting people to work together or communicating your goal?
I'm a pretty big stickler about having like a personal rapport with the artists I work with, and that goes for like letter.
Being in the room, you like to be in the room.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I want to know where your ass lives if my shit's late. But
She will come and get it.
I will come and get it. I mean, right down to the letter and the colorist too. I'm pitching something, and I'm really gunning to have Conley Smith, who's a friend of mine, do the colors, because not just because she's a friend of mine, because she's very, very good. I've seen books just look awful because they hired like some random colorist who just did it.
Yeah, they didn't ask the artist.
Yeah,
I
they
don't
didn't.
understand. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you ask the artist who they would like to be colored by?
Exactly. And I mean, the artist that I have working on this pitch, I mean, she gets final say, obviously. Like, it's her art that's getting colored. So she gets to decide. But I'm really, really leery of, say, like a publisher just picking out someone to workhorse it, basically. Because why do they care? Like,
Well,
why?
a lot of the books have very specific budgets, and they go, here's the guys we can ask
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah.
And been in that position quite a bit.
Yeah, the way I describe that is, I want to be working with an editor who wants to make the book good. I don't want to be working with the editor who wants to make the book good enough.
Yeah.
Because the editor who will say, yeah, we can get that guy to color it, I've been working with him for years, it'll come in on time, and he won't care much about the story, but Superman will be blue in every panel, and that's what matters.
Well, it's easy to see why they get that way. They
Yeah.
get burned.
Yes.
They get burned right before Friday when everything needs to be uploaded.
Right. Oh, no, I understand why there are editors like that. I just don't want to work with them.
Yeah.
because I'm going to be fighting to make the book as good as I can be. And if one of the people I have to fight is the guy who's giving artistic direction to all of the others, then it's a waste of
Most editors I know
effort.
are happy to sit back if the team kind of fills all those functions themselves. I see that a lot of editors, oh good, here's one that kind of does itself, and it's like, oh man, I've been wanting to get one of these going for a while so I can get my other work done. And like a lot of time, one of the ugly heavy things I occasionally have to do is some artists will not feel comfortable because they're afraid, like if they crab too much about the colors or something like that no one will want to work with them. And it's really not the case. Usually, as long as they turn their stuff in and it looks great and they're very reliable, they're always going to have work. But I understand exactly why they're like that and why they get worried about it. So I'll just kind of reach out to them secretly and say, okay, what do you want to change about the color? And I'll be the bad guy. So I'll then go in and just say, all right, can we have this, and this, and and then kind of gets that person off the hook, though I really prefer the artist to do it.
I don't really have a problem stepping in on stuff because I feel like if you're gonna, I mean, with like
You kind of enjoy it, really.
I'm a dickhead. With Legend of Bold Riley, I mean, like I'm the showrunner on that book. That is my property. So if there's an issue, like I feel like it's my responsibility to take care of it and communicate like any concerns anybody has to somebody else.
Is that different from the editor being the showrunner on other books?
Well, really, the editor should do this, but they again, they're all like overworked and they're trying to get things done. And I usually see it as, okay, the artist and the colorist, you don't want them to have this enmity. You know, you want that to be like, big deal if the colorist is mad at me.
Yeah.
so like, I'll come in and I'll apologize, promise to buy him food at some point or something like that. Please fix this and everything, so that he doesn't hate the artist, because that makes his job miserable. Like, oh, now this artist who complained about me. I mean, there's a lot of egos going. It can be a volatile thing, and you got to really do a quite juggling act to make this thing happen.
Does it make a difference though if they're being difficult in service of the story, though, if they have a reason why?
I don't care. Yeah, if they're being difficult because they're trying to be great, I've got a lot of tolerance for that. Like, okay, I get why you're being hard, but if they're
really
just
good.
being difficult, then it's like, we're not going to work together.
It's an ego thing,
Yeah, I think you have to like the people you work with first and foremost.
It helps.
I mean, I have no tolerance for douchebags, and I don't want to work with douchebags.
I love working with douchebags. Line up the
Line up to this side.
This is two very different.
And so when I'm looking for artists or when I'm working with people, I want to like them. I want them to be, a friend in some degree, because we're going to be communicating. I'm probably going to talk to them maybe a little bit more than I am my wife that day. So it's, and I don't want somebody who's, I was saying this earlier to somebody that at a certain point you've got to check your ego and everybody else has to check theirs. The story's the thing, and you want everybody involved to get this story out, this book, to give a shit about it. And I don't want to just hire like some dude I found on DeviantArt, which I don't go to DeviantArt, but there's only
Funny
so
though,
much.
that's the first thing you said. DeviantArt.
There's only so
Everybody
much,
sends you.
so many My Pretty Pony fan art things I can stand in a day.
It's My Little Pony.
I love
First
My
of
Little
all,
Pony, but
sir.
I just don't fan arts kind of. But anyway, so you want people that when I work with artists, say we're starting something new, we're doing a pitch. We bounce ideas back and forth. I'm like, what do you think about this? No, I'm not into it. Cool. It goes back in the drawer. I don't want you drawing something just because you want to be a part of a pitch.
Yeah, you can head off a lot of trouble right then.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the first thing I ask anybody I work with is like, what do you like to draw? And they're like, I like to draw bears. I'm like, cool, it's a chick and a bear on the run from the KGB in the 1980s.
Boom.
There, we got a story, let's go. He's like, this is awesome. Yeah, it's because it's got a bear in it. You want to draw bears, you know what I mean?
And you know that they're going to
Yeah.
do a really good bear. They're going to
The
be
same
into
thing, I
what
mean,
they're
a
doing.
lot-
Good pitch, by the way.
Right?
Thanks.
He just off the top of his head. That's how he did.
Anybody want to pick that up? I'm available. So I think that you want people who care about the work as much as you do, and you want to give them something to care about. Nobody wants to. I never want to be a dude who just hands a script to somebody and be like, draw this monkey, and then get it back to me by the end of the month. Because that's no fun. You know what I mean? I don't want to tell people what to do. It's just like, let's have fun doing this. It should be fun, and then that reflects in the end work.
I usually ask for a wish list. I kind of like what you said. I like, can you get, I remember specifically I did that one time with Kevin Nolan, and Kevin Nolan gave me this long list, like, I like these things. And I was like, okay, and I got like 12 of those 20 things in the story, just to see if I could do it. One, it's kind of a fun exercise in parameters that helps you shape it, and almost anything. It's almost like those Brian Eno's, idea of brainstorming things, what's it called?
The card deck.
Yeah, the deck, and it's, I'll get to it in a minute. But yeah, I'll ask them, it's like, can you give me a list? I can't promise everything will get in there, but if you tell me things you like.
But give me an idea of what won't make you hate your life 30 pages in.
Well,
Right, you have
because
to
they
draw
get
it over and over
typecast
again.
so
Yeah.
much, like if an artist is famous, what always comes up, like they draw a lot of moody scenes against brick walls, then every other writer would go, oh, immediately gives them that same scene. They're so sick of drawing it, like Tom Coker, when I worked with him years ago, said, I want to do something outside. I want to draw nature, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I got this Western story. And so we did a whole little Marvel Western with horses and everything, and he loved it because he never gets asked to do stuff like that.
Yeah, I was emailing with Fiona Staples, and we were just kicking ideas around, and she's like, you know, I really love drawing Saga, and it's great, but I don't get to do any historical stuff. And she was like, here's what I'm interested in: treasure, haunted treasure, pirate queens, sex, anti-imperialist undertones. And I was like, I can do that.
She couldn't have been more specific.
I know, it was great. She was like, here's all the stuff I want to draw. Make me a thing. And I was like, I can make the thing. So,
Yeah, I don't get that kind of, you know, I ask artists what do they want to draw, and that's often the answer. Is, one time it was like,
and then you were like, crowd scenes of horses driving cars, shooting guns.
Oh,
and it was like jungle. And I said, okay, well, we're doing Iron Man, but I bet you I can find a way to get some jungle in here within a couple of issues. Sure. The best was when I was doing a Vampirella story with Art Adams. And we said, well, Art, is there anything in particular you'd like to draw? And the word came back, bug people. I thought, okay, I know what this story is about now.
He's been aching this whole time.
I got 10 pages, I got Vampirella, I got bug people. And I need an excuse.
I know the assignment.
Right. So that can be great.
It also makes the artist really excited to work with you next time it comes around, or if there's an opportunity, if they know that you will work together.
Yeah.
Well, I think
well.
it's good that they know that you value their input.
Yeah.
That you're not gonna, nitpick and be a horrible taskmaster.
And it spurs new ideas.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that pitch that I just mentioned, I would have never come up, just sitting in my backyard being like, oh, I need to draw, write something. It's like, you ask the guys, and then, because like you guys had mentioned, so many of them do, like for an artist, it's, some of the stuff is work for hire, like dude finds your, Tumblr and is like, hey, I'll pay you whatever a page and draw this for me. Okay, it pays my bills, but maybe they're not into it. But I've come to realize, like, when they're into it, you can see that on the page. And you always ask for input, it becomes, and with that stuff, it becomes more 50-50, it's more of a collaboration, and I think that's why I do comics. I like working with other people and producing this, awesome shit. Or at least I hope it's awesome, but I think it's awesome.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
my wife thinks it's awesome.
back in the late 70s, when I was in high school, college, and was looking at comics, friends and I would talk over the comics, and we'd say, these comics aren't necessarily better crafted than these other comics, but it's pretty clear that the creators are excited about them. Those early Claremont Cockrum X-Men, oh man, they were putting all the energy they had on every page. And at that same month's issue of Justice League, it's just like, yeah, these are experienced professionals doing a job.
It's well crafted. And the technique is
it's
great.
well crafted, but it's just not passionate the way this X-Men book is passionate. I think a huge amount of somebody like Rob Liefeld's appeal isn't because he had the craft chops, but he was clearly having a great time.
It's all caps in the comic.
And it communicated through the page. This is a guy who doesn't know how.
Pumping his fist.
Yeah. This is a guy who is every bit as excited about this comic as the people who are responding to it are excited about reading it. He's having a great time, and it's infectious.
And that's kind of the secret then. It sounds like how to get the rest of the team passionate about telling a story. It's maybe the seed of it is your story as a writer, but it's a story, the story that all of you are putting together.
Yeah.
And getting everybody on.
Yeah, earlier when people were talking about, you were saying you'd like it when your collaborators are friends. My reaction was, I don't really care if the collaborator and I have any interest in hanging out together. I just want to be on the same page. Yeah. I want to be pulling in the same direction, and various other cliches. That if they're excited about the story we're telling, that's more important than whether we would have a good time meeting for drinks.
That's probably more. I don't hang out with people. I just don't enjoy it.
Because they're douchebags.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, I think that actually is probably a better way to put it. Is you want sort of your mentalities just sort of meld. Like this book I'm working on, like I'm a big Marx Brothers fan, you know. That's hard to find, you know, but that's, in this book, that's kind of humor. It's all, you know, sort of puns and whatnot, and sexual innuendo and stuff. And so it's nice when the artist comes back and it's like, oh, dude, this is hilarious, you know, this is funny. Cool. I hope everybody else thinks it is too, you know. It's like, or Monty Python. I love fucking Monty Python. Not everybody does, but, you know, it's nice when you get something, there's a connection, or there's a meeting of like, we enjoy these two things. You know?
And these two things are a big part of what the story is about.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
okay, good.
And they can tell it, you know, they know what needs to sell this,
Yeah.
you know, this joke or whatever, visually. And
Jeff, you were talking about the word balloons being used, the Toth would use the white of the word balloons as a compositional element. That's because I was thinking about ways that letterers can also contribute to the story. Of course, they're doing your words, but placement of word balloons, things like that. Is that how you see their position, or their part of the team?
Yeah, they have one of the worst jobs, because they are often given a 22-page book on Thursday to turn in Friday.
This
And
is typing,
then
though, isn't
they're
it?
expected that you might have some notes that they still need to get done and back in by 5 o'clock before it can be uploaded. So, you know, it's hard to to be too harsh on them when some things aren't getting the right voice across, when like they were given literally no time to do it. My big note with most letterers are, please don't letter it in papyrus. Yeah, Comic Sans. Please use Comic Sans like a professional.
What are your feelings on that
But I
Jokerman
do
font?
always ask, this is a little style thing that I really like, if I can get it. I prefer rounder balloons, and I prefer a lot of space between the dialogue and the line of the balloon. I don't like it all cramped in. I think it looks unpro.
Yeah, I'm insanely anal retentive about lettering.
I know.
I'm very lucky to be working with Comicraft and John Rochelle, because John is unflappable, and John is really interested in design, and he'll listen to me go on about stuff. But I mean, one of the things that drives me bananas about modern day lettering is back in the 60s and the 70s, when lettering was done on the boards, comic book letterers would do the panel borders as well. So, you know, it would go from the penciler to the letterer. He'd roll the panel borders and do the lettering, and then it would go to the inker to finish it up. And as a result, the panel borders, the word balloon borders, and the lettering was all done with the same pen.
All the same.
And they're all the same
stroke.
width.
Yeah.
And when you have something that's got a nice juicy letter thing in a skinny rule for the balloon, and then the panel border is like halfway in between the two, it doesn't mesh. It doesn't look like that word balloon combines with the art in that panel, because all of your line widths are different.
Yeah.
It clashes just like as if you
And
colored
you
it
know,
wrong.
you can get even worse when you've got the colored caption with the little bit of Nightwing's logo on the side, and it's all this carefully done computer-generated imagery over, you know, rough gestural inking, and it doesn't belong. It throws you out of the story, because the style of the lettering is generic and the style of the art is specific. You know, lettering is design. You know, it's typography. It's part of the composition of the panel, of the page, and if it looks like an afterthought, if it looks like somebody spilled chiclets across the page, and they're just placed where, you know, wherever they happen to fit, then it interferes with the composition.
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of letterers are told when they're coming through Comicraft or some of the other groups, you know, typically, like, there's this handful of people everybody goes to, and they've got their sub-letterers who do all this heavy lifting. And one of the things that often gets taught is they look at it like you would see the lettering on a PDF, where you're following the pattern of the word balloons through the page, like a backwards S or something like that. And I really always try to rail against that. It's like, I understand that theory, but I think you're now conflicting with what the art was doing, which
Right,
is the
right.
same
You
thing.
were supposed to be following the
Yeah,
art
it's like-
through the page.
It's like, yeah, you're only now concerned about the dialogue and the caption boxes, and it's like the artist was giving you all this space that you're now ignoring because you want to make your lettering. It's like, just treat each panel like it's its own thing you're not going to see, which, by the way, digital helps get us back to that, because then you look at that panel and it's like, it doesn't matter what it is in relation to everything else. It only matters in relation to itself. And I like stuff like the way John Workman would always drop a word balloon between two panels so that it used up some gutter space. Because why? With gutter space isn't precious. We don't care about that. You know, and it creates the feel that there's more white and more room around there to kind of matte the color.
Also, Walt did a lot of panels that, you know, you'd be going 3 panels down and then a panel over here, and if that word balloon wasn't in between the panels, you wouldn't read to the next panel.
Right.
You'd read to the panel to the right.
With the
Yeah.
flow.
So having that panel overlap is, again, it's graphics. It's graphic design.
Yeah. And
Brian
it doesn't
Hurt.
chew up art space.
Brian Hurt does that in Sixth Gun. He does the sound effects
Yeah.
himself. He doesn't do. I
So
think
does
he
Chris
still does.
Omni.
Yeah, so, and makes it part of the art. You can tell, like Kurt was saying, that with the same brush, with the same line width and the same pressure, and so it looks like part of the rest of the art, and it doesn't look like disjointed patchwork pieces.
Although sometimes that doesn't work. You know, sometimes my complaint with that is if the sound effect looks like part of the artwork and the word balloon doesn't, then the sound effect doesn't feel like it's on the sound layer. You know, I want the sound effects and the word balloons to look like they're either floating or immersed in the panel or whatever at the same plane.
On the informational level.
And if they, you know, if they don't match up, if they don't mesh, then it starts feeling like, you know, the sound effect isn't a sound, it's an object, because it's drawn like the objects are drawn and not like the sounds are drawn.
Well, I think part of it's figuring out, like, it's an understanding that not every font works for every book. You know, people get like one, they're like, this is the font, this is my, you know, word balloon font. I'm using this on every single book that I do, and it's like that doesn't necessarily work. Same thing with sound effects.
You can have a
You're doing it
signature
digitally,
font.
you know, Bada Boom doesn't work with this book. It doesn't fit this sort of serious tone, you know. You've got to understand that, and word balloon placement plays a bit in sort of the pacing of a story too. I mean, that's why I tend to sort of letter my own stuff sometimes, is because I know the space I want between these two balloons for it to be sort of, for it to work, so that there's a pause that goes in there. But yeah, I think it's an understanding, like with my book, Vic Boone, I had to dig around to find, and finally found an old school font called Jack Armstrong that looks old school. It fits the feel that I want of the book, as opposed to, say, like the Jim Lee font or whatever. Wouldn't look as well, you know. But I don't do sound effects in my own book, because I'm like, you see the car smashing into the wall. I think you know it makes a sound sometimes. Yeah.
If it's visually loud enough, it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
I often will write the sound effect just for the artist to think about it, and then I'll take it back out, because like Gabriel Hardman is going to like make this look like a big loud crash, and then now it's like I'm just subtracting if I leave that sound effect in there and I take it back out.
But in some books it does work. I'm not downing sound effects.
Oh
as
yeah, we have to have it in
common-
Batman '66.
Yeah. Well,
It's
yeah,
like,
of course.
people would feel cheated if they did not
Yeah,
have a kaboom
exactly.
that took up and dominated for a.
But you'll get strips
Also,
from-
sometimes you don't see the car smashing into the thing. Sometimes you've got a guy in a room going,
Yeah.
and what's he reacting to?
And it's understanding, as, you know, speaking from the letterist standpoint, it's an understanding when this works, when this doesn't, you know, and letting the writer know, like, you know, you don't need a smash every time this guy punches something. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, it's okay to like
Like it's a
let
kung
that
fu
breathe.
flick where everything's
Yeah,
extremely
yeah.
loud.
Yeah. Right, but you know, you can use them judiciously. I was talking to another creator recently who was saying that, you know, he made a deliberate choice to not use sound effects because he wanted his his books to come off as sophisticated, like this, this, and this. And I said, well, in this book, there are 21 sound effects in that graphic novel, and there are 14 sound effects in this other thing. There's sound effects in everything you named. And he said, well, they're quiet. And I said, yes, that's because they're that kind of story.
Well, they're used like in a sophisticated way.
Yes.
You know?
Very
Right,
elegant.
right. It's not like
When they work
sound
well,
effects,
you don't notice they're there.
Yeah.
sound effects are unsophisticated, so I will not use them. No, sound effects can be used in a Batman 66 in-your-face pop art way, or they can be used in a really elegant, quiet, sort of nuanced way. You know, it's just another tool, and you can use tools all kinds of different ways.
So it sounds like that's, again, another part of being passionate about the story. Even the letterist needs to be passionate about the story because he or she needs to care about what the book looks like, what the panel looks like, composition and things like that.
The funny part, just to, but it was one of the books named was Tamara Drew by Posey Simmons.
Yeah.
There are sound effects in panel 1. It's just like, look, they're
right
just
there.
quiet, that's all.
Just
Those
quiet.
are great books.
Those are wonderful books.
With a few more minutes left.
Should we ask questions?
Yeah.
Do you want to take questions?
Sure,
Are you
yeah.
willing to? All right. Does anyone have questions
It's
about
like that kind of crowd.
being passionate about the story, even if you're not the writer?
Yeah. So we wanted to ask questions at the beginning.
Sorry, I've been hogging
Maybe they
all
don't
your
wanna ask
time.
questions. I'm sorry.
That's
Somebody,
fine.
we're
Well,
going
if
to
you do,
call
don't
on
be
you.
shy.
Would you like us to ask you questions?
It's all right.
Excellent.
Okay.
Wait.
Is this live? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Schooled you. He just went up to the mic and just.
No, sorry.
We'll get to
Unless you're gonna phone
Yeah,
it in
since
from
this
the
is
front.
being recorded, I guess everybody who's asking questions should follow his example and maybe line up behind him.
unless it's dirty.
I'm curious about if there's a tipping point where I don't know if you like to work on stories in the beginning by drawing, and then at a certain point you might decide to just illustrate it yourself. But I know I've personally gotten in trouble before because I tend to work with artists who are my friends, and sometimes I do a little bit too much drawing, and then they lose any excitement for it, and then I have to draw it myself. Has that ever happened to you guys?
I don't think so. No, because typically I'm like, I'm not drawing this shit.
Yeah, we're
There's a
far too
horse.
lazy to-
Yeah, there's a horse battle in here. That's your job.
I drew my own comics in high school and college, and I discovered something very quickly. I don't want to draw curbs. I don't want to draw cars. I can't figure out how to draw where the building stops and the sidewalk goes in. You know, I'm really, really excited about telling the story visually, and I'm really, really not excited about illustration.
I think that might actually be the best test for like if you're cut out to do in particular comics is the car test. If you actually pay attention and draw the car correctly and you don't want to cut your own throat, you can maybe do this for a living.
Yeah.
Because I was in art school and I was like, fuck this isosceles perspective nonsense. I want to do like talking animal stories.
And if you can draw a traffic light well,
Bless your heart.
now you have to draw it 4 times this page, because the hero's flipping over it and the villain is coming. You know, it's one thing to be able to draw it. It's another thing to be able to repeat this stuff
I think
over
you can
and
probably
over.
get that out of your system though by, and I think this is really important, and there's no reason every writer shouldn't do it. Give your artist the reference you're thinking of. You know, if you have a specific scene, give them a picture from exactly the car you're talking about or the area that you want it to happen, and embed it in the Word document or whatever you're using, because now every single Word program will do that. And that way you can kind of get it across. You don't have to describe it to death, and they try to interpret what's in your mind. It's like, oh, it's one of these kind of backhoes digging up, or something like that. And it saves them so much time, because then they don't have to go online and insert. And it used to be worse. They used to have to go to the library and dig through magazines and everything. At least they can go online, but you could save them even that. You know?
Yeah. Talking to artists who started in that era. I mean, Howard Chaykin says, if you know what it's called and you have a modem, you have no excuse.
Yeah.
Because he
Look
used
it
to
up.
have to go to the New York Public Library, and now you can just, oh, it looks like that.
Well, and it is a great thing to do because with all of my scripts, I send like an entire folder full of reference, and then when I get my colorist, I send another one that's entirely just like, here's the palette you should be working with.
So you give them a seed, but you do need to ultimately trust them, let them
Yeah,
do their
yeah.
thing.
It's like here's all your stuff. Interpret it as you will.
Could you walk us through the production process of creating a book?
A writer and an artist love them,
I like the way
each
we
other
all
very
got
much.
quiet and just looked down.
I was like in your story. Well, the writer and the artist, they love each other very, very
They
much.
do a special hug on bristle board.
When you say production process,
Like,
you mean
as like from a writer's standpoint, like what do you start on, like the first thing, and then who do you
Get
like?
that script out.
Oh,
Well-
well, first you need a deadline. That's I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
paramount to everything, and you better obey it, and it's not some made-up number that doesn't matter. It really does matter with production schedule, because everything's got to, you can't take the big chunk of time when the artist and the colorist need to take all this other time. You need to actually be one of the smaller chunks of time to get it going and if you can't get the whole thing done, if you can just tell them where the story's going and at least get them a few pages so they can get started, you'll be doing everybody a huge favor, and everybody down the line will thank you for that. But anyway, say like you take a week to write your 20 or 22 page, and I'm only talking about monthly periodicals, obviously, but you know, instead of a graphic novel. So you take a week to write your script, you know, then next to the artists, now it seems like we're getting back to more people. It's not getting split up between pencilers and inkers as much anymore. Or if it is, they just pencil it and then they adjust the levels in Photoshop and bam, it's inked. Don't argue about it. It's just, but it happens. And you know, and then to the colorist who gets even less time. Colorist usually artist needs to take about a month to draw a book. Colorist then gets about a week, and the poor letterer, as we said, gets that day,
2 days.
Friday.
half a day at the end. And then it comes back and goes through everybody for notes, and then you sweat and sweat and sweat until it goes out at like 6:30 at night on Friday.
To answer your question a different way, that's the order that the various creators will work in. When I'm writing a story, you know, if I've figured out what the story is, the first thing I do is I sit down with a yellow legal pad and I rough out the story. And sometimes I just rough out the events of the story and it all goes in order. Sometimes I'll rough out a main thing and I'll then stick scenes on the side. You know, I'll end up with a piece of paper that looks like hieroglyphics because there's bits of it over here and there's arrows drawn over here. And either I'll rework that into a cleaner plot outline, or more often in the case, I'll just write on it, page 1 here, page 2. You know, I'll put in the page breaks on that page. And it used to be when I was starting out, I would then sketch a rectangle for each page and write, you know, little quick panel descriptions of each panel before I would start writing the script, just to make sure that there wasn't too much stuff on any page. These days, I've been doing this for 30 years, so once I've got my outline and I know where the page breaks are, I'll go right into writing a script, panel descriptions, dialogue. I used to write all the dialogue first and go back and put in the panel descriptions later, because panel descriptions require thought. A slightly different kind of thought than being in the characters' heads. But again, experience, you know, now if it's a really tricky panel description that's going to take me 5 minutes to write, I'll come back to it later. But you know, the more experience I get, the smoother the process goes. But I'll start just with notes on a yellow legal pad, work that up until I have all of the story beats I need, all of the scenes, figure out where the page breaks are, and write a script from that outline.
Even if you don't draw, you can still do stick figures in panels like you was talking about, and I find that actually helps people a lot, because then they stop thinking about it like it's TV, which some people do.
Yeah.
And they're asking for things that can only happen in real time. Like, no, you don't realize you just asked for 3 separate actions in this panel. And Really, a panel can usually only get one or two happening, preferably one each time, and you've got to build in the fact that you're working with the reader to fill in their headspace a little bit between the panels.
Yeah, there are, you always have to keep in mind that the images are still images. You cannot have a panel of a guy picking up a football and throwing it. You can have a panel of him picking up the football or throwing it. And roughing stuff out even in stick figures. I once was given a script to go over where in the first panel there were 9 people in a school lunchroom, all of them doing specific things. Then I looked at the rest of the page. It was a 12-panel page. And I didn't need to read any farther to go, you can't do this. You know, you can't put a panel on a 12-panel page with this much information in it. There's just too much.
You're saddest.
Yeah.
Saddest.
So get into the heads of your artist and see what you're telling them to do. Actually.
And along the way, you'll discover things that I have never figured out how an artist can draw an elevator door opening. You know, a door with a hinge.
I don't know why.
It's easy to do that, but an elevator door opening is just something that is virtually impossible to show in a static picture.
All right.
Yeah, you had a question too, didn't you?
Very good.
Oh.
We are out of time. I'd like to thank my wonderful panelists for a delightful discussion. Thank you guys for coming. And